Massive thanks to you, Sally. Thanks very much for your sharing. So actually, ladies and gentlemen, we will now move on to our concluding session, where it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Looi Kheong, Head of the Competition, Consumer Protection and Intellectual Property Rights Division of the ASEAN Secretariat, to discuss ASEAN's innovation initiatives and to summarize and conclude our series. So we actually partner ASEAN Secretariat to organize this event, so it's really massive thanks to the support of the ASEAN Secretariat as well. So right now, over to you, Looi. Okay, let's just give a short while while Mr. Looi connects. Perfect. So over to you, Looi.
Thank you very much, Desmond. A very good afternoon to you from Jakarta. Yes, and a very good morning to those of you who are in UK. I'll be speaking on the Intellectual Property Innovation Initiative in ASEAN, but firstly, thank you very much indeed to the UKIPO for getting us involved, and also for the support which you have given to us in helping to implement some of our deliverables under our ASEAN Action Plan. The innovation economy, as you all know, and as we have all heard from all the previous speakers, is the future of development. And intellectual property is a critical component in driving its growth. And the intellectual property protection is, of course, the powerhouse for innovation and economic growth. And as pointed out by the ambassador, John Lambert, the benefits to the economy is very clear. It promotes innovation, R&D, increased profits, attracts venture capitalism, commercialize innovative products, promote cultural expression and diversity. And tech transfer itself also promotes development and helps in the dissemination of technology, publication and licensing, helps monetize innovation and grow, build brands, trademarks and intangible access, increases market value, and also help SMEs as well to contribute to innovation, because they contribute to innovation and creativity. And their IPR use increases their profits and income and employment. The benefits to society is also very clear, the continuous stream of innovative and competitive products, and helps to build consumer trust as well. And not to mention also poor IPR enforcement will also undermine society benefits of IPR. And let us delve straight into what we do in ASEAN. In trying to integrate the ASEAN Economic Community 2025, the AEC Blueprint 2025 encourages ASEAN member states to establish a policy environment that is supportive for innovation. And in this context, the AMS, the ASEAN member states, signed a ASEAN Framework Agreement on Intellectual Property Cooperation in December 1995, which basically allows IP cooperation to strengthen ASEAN intellectual property administration, enhance ASEAN cooperation in IP enforcement and protection, and to explore the possibility of setting up the ASEAN patent and trademark system. These are all implemented via our IP action plan, which is already in its third iteration. And the body responsible to implement it is the ASEAN Working Group on Intellectual Property Cooperation, AWG-IPC, which was established in 1996. So this is our AEC blueprint, and you'll notice that there are 5 main pillars, of which one is to ensure that to develop a competitive, innovative, and dynamic ASEAN. And under our entire blueprint, you'll notice the 5 pillars right at the top, and of which the highlighted portion, the sector in which I'm in charge of, is to strengthen the intellectual property rights cooperation within ASEAN. And in this regard, how that works is the 4 strategic goals. There are 4 strategic goals in the ASEAN IPR Action Plan, and these are aligned with the strategic measures of the AEC Blueprint to develop a competitive, innovative, and dynamic ASEAN by fostering the creation and protection of knowledge, which would with the aim of bringing an impact to the AEC so that it become more competitive, productive through effective exploitation of IP and creativity, and at some stage could be one of the contributory factors towards increases in the volume and value of exports, increases in flows of domestic and foreign direct investments. So in looking at other initiatives in which we, so if you were to look at it from a holistic point of view, the entire action plan would contribute at some degree to help develop the innovative objectives in ASEAN. So the IPR action plan with 4 strategic goals, 19 initiatives and 56 deliverables, objectives to stimulate creativity and innovation. And these are the 19 initiatives that we have here. These are just a snapshot, but specifically there are 4 strategic goals. You see that the first strategic goals is really to develop a robust ASEAN IP system by strengthening officers, and part of these initiatives will include ensuring that to improve patent, trademarks, and industrial design services, promote improvement of IP services in terms of timeliness and quality of output, promote excellence of CMOs in transparency, accountability, and governance, and explore the feasibility of harmonizing formality requirements for trademarks, industrial design in this region, and also the accession of the international treaties such as Madrid Protocol, Hague Agreement, and patent cooperation treaties, accession to other WIPO administered treaties, and also to establish a ASEAN IP Academy. Our second strategic goal, of course, concerns the development of a regional IP platform and infrastructure, and this will help to contribute to enhancing ASEAN Economic Community, of which you notice that initiative number 8 is to develop new networks of integrated IP services for the region, including technology transfer offices, innovation technology support offices, patent libraries, search services, and online filing system. This also includes the improved service delivery of AMS through connected online services, including patent, trademark, copyright, and industrial design search system and online system. Also, the adoption of modern information technologies to improve quality of regional services and improve and centralize the management of ASEAN IP portal by ensuring IP information, including statistical data, is accurate and regularly updated. The other part of it would be in strategic goal 3 to develop an expanded and inclusive ASEAN IP ecosystem. This would initiative 12 is particularly important: implementation of regional action plan or IPR enforcement, and 13 establish an ASEAN IP network. And 14 intra and extra ASEAN engagement with stakeholders, external partners, including through the establishment of ASEAN IPR help desk. 15 on regional accreditation. And on strategic goal number 4, which is basically the regional mechanism, to develop a regional mechanism to promote asset creation and commercialization. Initiative 16 is to improve IP awareness for MSMEs and creative sectors. 17, develop IP valuation and services to create awareness and the value of IP as a financial asset. And 18, promote the commercialization of GIs in ASEAN and GRTKs, or genetic resources traditional knowledge. That is actually the snapshot of our action plan based on the 19 initiatives. And the AWG IPC, of course, is the body that's responsible to help implement the deliverables and the initiatives. And we work with dialogue partners such as the UKIPO, but we also have the SNIPA, China, Australia, New Zealand, European Union, Japan, Korea, US, PTO, WIPO, and the private sectors as well, such as IPR and also INTA. Very quickly, we have 4 task force, which has been set up to help look at specific deliverables. The task force on trademarks, of course, will focus on the trademarks initiatives. And at present, we are working on the feasibility studies to establish the regional trademark registration system, and also to update the ASEAN common guidelines, which have already been completed at the second version. And we also have the task force on patents, is known as ASPEC, ASEAN Task Force on Patent Examination Cooperation. They focus on delivering the regional initiatives on patents, and has recently launched, of course, a Patent Cooperation Treaty, PCT ASPEC, last year. And essentially, it's a regional patent work sharing program for 9 ASEAN member states, where you can use search and examination reports of participating IP officers to accelerate patenting process in any of the participating IP offices. And another initiative launch was the ASPEC AIM, which has a committed turnaround time of 6 months to receive the first office action if an ASPEC request is made for Industry 4 patent application. So PCT ASPEC has the additional choice of relying on a patent cooperation report issued from an ASEAN International Search Authority or International Preliminary Examination Authority. The other 2 task force is on ANI, which is the ASEAN Network of IP Enforcement Experts, which basically brings together all the enforcement experts within the region to collaborate and to coordinate, and also to achieve the various deliverables and objectives set out for IP enforcement in the region. This year, we have established the IP Academy Working Group to set up an IP Academy on a virtual platform. But other than the ASEAN IPR Action Plan. There are also other IPR initiatives, priorities, and goals as well, found in the ASEAN Digital Integration Framework Action Plan 2019-2025, and also the ASEAN Innovation Roadmap 2019-25 and its implementation plan. The DFAT provides for development of coordination mechanism to enhance enforcement of IP in the digital environment, and in priority area 5 to foster entrepreneurship by adopting policies, supporting creativity, entrepreneurship, and the flourishing of technology, and also enhancing protection of IPR in the digital economy. The AIR, the ASEAN Innovation Roadmap, has multiple IP deliverables, including development of online IPR system, which have been identified earlier in our action plan. This would include such a database for ASEAN file IPs, IP marked listings, IP available for licensing, good practice, IP management, process of technology licensing, information and technology transfer offices and IP offices on benefits and utilization of GI, establish the IP Academy, regional trademark registration system, book sharing of examination pattern. Other than that, also to develop multiple IP licensing option, one price, one IP, one price, IP sharing among communities, and the development of guidelines for blockchain on smart contracts for crypto digital assets. What are the synergies between IP and science, technology, and innovation? The basis for enhanced work by the AMS IP officers to promote science and technology innovation, IP creation, and IP commercialization are based on, firstly, our IP Action Plan Deliverable 16.3, which is to develop comprehensive collaborative programs between IP officers and science and technology, research and development institutions, and universities to improve their capacity to identify, protect, and manage the IPs. And insofar as the ASEAN Declaration on Innovation Article 18 is concerned under the Science and Tech, they are to promote the use of the IP rights system that facilitates research, collaboration, technology, commercialization, and an innovation culture. So some of the IP initiatives facilitating science and technology and innovation, which will be access to IP protection services. The scientific community will gain better access to IP protection through ongoing considered efforts and fast and simple ways of making online filing. Access to protection multiple jurisdiction through the ASEAN member states' accession to international treaties, such as Madrid Protocol and Patent Cooperation Treaty, technical support, development of technology transfer offices in universities and other institutions support with easier access to patent searches. Development of ASEAN online databases also facilitates the scientific community access to patent information at the click of a button. Also commercialization, IPR help desk, IP marketplace valuation, and IP fairs. Some of these collaborative actions would include information exchange, domain addresses of all IP offices, online portals and databases, list of all the technology transfer offices and their addresses online, available information in the ASEAN IP portal, providing information on IP identification, protection, utilization, and commercialization, importance of IP asset management for business expansion under the ASEAN Economic Community, and the list of events for businesses. There's also collaboration with ASEC IP team and dialogue partners, such as awareness raising, capacity building seminars, project to support development of institutional IP policies, analysis of national laws and regulations, customization of UKIPO IP policy templates so as to have a national model IP policy for universities, workshop and some practical coaching, and technical assistance to a selected number of universities to create individual policy based on the national model. Project to set up networks of TTOs in an attempt to reach the necessary critical mass to be effective. There are also lots of other additional resources which are available for researchers, and these are all set out here, but I'm sure there's a much greater sources available on the internet as well. In terms of some statistical filings, it's very clear that trademarks filings remain the largest in the ASEAN region, with patents having only just a small proportions. And the second statistical graph here will show that the non-resident filing are substantially higher than resident filing. Basically, it shows that perhaps the local innovation culture needs to be developed so as to ensure that this gap between resident filing and non-resident filing could be closed, could be closed and reduced, and reaches the statistical numbers which we usually see in more developed countries. And in relation to patent related initiatives and IPR action plan, We still have Myanmar, which is yet to accede to the Patent Cooperation Treaty, but I believe they'll be in the process of doing so, maybe within a year or two. And other ongoing deliverables in relation to patents would be the development of the common guidelines of patent examination, national patent manuals, and then ASEAN patent cooperation aspect to be utilized by at least 5% of patent applicants by 2025, and also development new networks of integrated IP services for the region, including TTOs and innovation technology support offices. Some of the emerging and cross-cutting issues that we may face in relation to trying to develop and promote innovation would be the access to information on patents for researchers, multiple licensing issues, shared subscriptions for TTOs across ASEAN, open sourcing for patents, and also to address patent harmonization and mutual recognition of patent across the region. Some of the other work that we may consider doing in the future, and which are also quite important, maybe there's a need to develop strategies to facilitate registration and commercialization of utility models, noting that most of the technological innovations are registered under utility models than patents in ASEAN. There is also a need to collaborate with technology business incubation centers in ASEAN. Work is needed to enhance the collaborative meetings, to have more regular and frequent collaborative meetings in IP and science and technology to explore synergies. For example, recently we had the technology scouting seminars, which were supported by WIPO to help developing economies to fast-track their R&D by scouting the tech world and license appropriate technology to accelerate domestic and R&D development and innovation. On the works also is the development of public forums to address niche innovation and technology issues for public stakeholders, such as the academia, businesses, researchers, scientists, and policymakers. Some recent IPR developments which are helpful to drive innovation, as I mentioned, the global protection system for metric protocol, 9 AMS is already on board. PCT 9 AMS is also on board with the exception of Myanmar. And for the Hague Agreement in relation to industrial designs, 4 AMS is on board. We have, of course, regional databases which would be very useful to researchers and also the business community. The trademark view, design view, patent scope, trademark, and also GI databases, IP case laws. Some regional platforms which are useful, as I mentioned earlier, is ASPEC, the ASEAN IP portal, where some of these regional databases are located. And of course, the feasibility study right now that we are currently conducting on determining whether an ASEAN trademark registration system is feasible. We have also developed common guidelines for trademarks and also the examination of designs. Work is ongoing now, as I mentioned earlier, the patent examination guide, to develop the patent examination guidelines for the purposes of trying to promote convergence and with the long-term harmonization of IP standards in the region. Then we also have the IP and business publications, which would be useful for the business sector and those who are intending to learn more about IP commercialization, the handbook on commercialization and strategies for managing IPRs and maximizing value. We have the business guide to IP institutions, laws, and filing processes in the UNSFATA countries, ASEAN, Australia, and New Zealand. We have also published the ASEAN, through the support of Korea, the ASEAN, under the ASEAN knowledge sharing programs, strengthening the IP infrastructure in ASEAN. And the knowledge sharing program 2.0 will be looking into IP valuation and commercialization. Just a quick preview of some of the deliverables or rather key priority deliverables that we've been working on since 2015, and just a snapshot. You notice that from 2015, the IP diagnostic was carried out to ascertain issues and extent of impact on delivery of IP services. 2016, we did the trademark and design diagnostic and revamped the IP portal. 2017, we started off the accessions to metric protocol, which went on for 3 years, 2017, 2018, and 2019. And then the publication of common guidelines of trademarks in 2017, development of a website for MSMEs on IP awareness and training, and also publication of guidelines for ID in 2018. And as a creative design, we had a design competition as well. For 2019, the IP key priority deliverables with a prioritized approach on ASPEC requests, which I've mentioned and elaborated earlier under the works done by ASPEC. Then, of course, the feasibility study for ASEAN IP Academy has taken place, and we also published the handbook on IP enforcement rules and regulations. Presently, at 2020, we look forward to the completion of a draft of the ASEAN Common Guidelines and Patent Examination and the feasibility study on ASEAN trademark registration, as I mentioned, and also to complete the comprehensive guidelines on GI registration, on protection mechanism of GIs, and impact study of ASEAN GI registration as well. Going forward, 2021, we have identified 3 deliverables firstly, to establish the virtual platform for the ASEAN IP Academy, to increase the competency of ASEAN IP stakeholders. Second, would be complete the study on the quality management system or AMS in relation to the patent process. This would basically ensure IP officers' patent databases and relevant information are easily accessible to their customers, partners, industry, and the public. These are currently work in progress at ASPEC, by the ASPEC Task Force in Singapore. Finally, the complete comparative study on genetic resources, traditional knowledge, and traditional cultural expression. Finally, the importance for IPR enforcement to encourage innovation have to be re-emphasized, because the effects of counterfeiting and piracy leads to a reduction of incentives to innovate. You will have adverse implication for R&D and creative activities, reduced firm-level investments, negative effects on FDI flows, risk of firms going out of business, supporting organized crime, may lead to substandard products, health and safety risk, has negative environmental impacts and bring about lower tax revenues, and of course increased enforcement costs for governments. So Initiative 12, as I mentioned earlier, the IPR enforcement, has the deliverables of awareness building, developing public statistical information, documenting cross-border movement, guidelines, best practices, workshops, coordination mechanism, and the works of ANI, which is the ASEAN network of intellectual property enforcement experts, as I've stated earlier. But of course, not all the work is done. There are substantial challenges which we are facing, of course, simply because the landscape is changing. First and foremost, Industrial Revolution 4.0 is always a big challenge, because the platform upon which the technology is operating are always changing and resulting in shorter timelines and shorter turnaround, which basically means that the IP registration system would also have to keep in pace with this development. And the issue of standardization of data, ASEAN data on IP needs to be standardized to be able to efficiently use online search tools and other IP databases. Then there's an issue of IP commercialization. ASEAN must allocate more resources towards IP commercialization. By supporting enhanced patent filings, we should work hand in hand with the current initiatives on improving IP office services. And of course, the ASEAN IP services, also there's a need for improved delivery, such as upgrade in IT infrastructure, digitize IP information and improve data availability. There's also the issue and challenge of regional integration. ASEAN integration also need more convergence of IP procedures, and we've been working with a lot of guidelines on examination protocols and work sharing of efficiency and to better support the region's competitiveness. Then IP valuation, which is something new, it remains to be a very difficult cross-cutting issue, because it requires intergovernmental agency work that needs to be done in order to allow for accurate appraisal and securitization of IP. And with that, I think that is basically just a snapshot, or rather a bird's-eye view of all the initiatives that we do under our ASEAN IPR action plan, which basically supports innovation. And thank you very much indeed, again, for the support. Thank you, Desmond.
Right. Thank you very much, Looi. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends, we have now concluded the first part of our webinar series. We sincerely apologize